Rayshon Jenkins, free agent, signee for the Jacksonville Jaguars. How good do you think he's going to be? I mean, what are your expectations? Seriously, he's such an under-the-radar guy.
Yeah, but that's your starting strong safety, clearly, for what you're paying him. My expectations, you know what? I think more than anything, it's going to be he's going to bring that attitude that they're looking for on defense. Because there was a lot of problems last year on that defense. We can break it down, ad nauseum. But I think a lot of the fact was that defense lacked swag. I think when you lost Jalen Ramsey, not to say he was the main culprit, but there's a lot of reasons why they didn't have swag last year. When you can't stop the run, that hurts your swag, obviously. But I think Rayshon Jenkins brings that attitude a little bit. He's going to bring that physicality that you need on defense, especially in the AFC South where people are going to be trying to run the ball on you.
Yeah, I liked him after I heard about him more and saw a little bit more. But I think I'd be lying if I'm like, wow, this guy's, got to really change the defense. This will be a really cool look at, did the Jags miss on getting like a high target safety that they were after and just didn't get, couldn't negotiate? The free agent stuff didn't work out. They misread the market, whatever it might have been, with Balky and Urban doing this. Or is this a guy that they looked at and said, hey, man, we can get a lot of value out of this guy. He's a better player than a lot of people are thinking. It's not going to cost as much. This is a great value play here, and there's not much of a separation between the other guys that are going to command a little bit more money and this guy, or somebody that we could use as a draft pick and bring in here. This would be an exercise in that, because I believe we all kind of are like, okay, we don't really have a good pulse on Rayshon Jenkins and what he's going to bring to this secondary.
See, I think he's going to be the guy, though, especially if I think this 3-4 defense is going to be what I think it's going to be. He's the guy that's going to be all over the place. He's going to be in the box. He's going to be blitzing. Once again, bring that physicality. Like, he's going to be an important cog of what Joe Cullen's trying to do, because in a 3-4 defense, you need versatile safeties. You need to add that confusion. You need to say where the blitz is coming from, what kind of coverage are they in, and he's going to be a focal point of that. So I think he's going to be absolutely essential to turning the page on a new defense because of what he's going to be asked to do in terms of versatility.
Yeah. So then what's next to him? We know he's going to be there. They paid him to be there. So now what for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
In terms of strong safety, we're talking about. Or are you talking about free safety next to him?
Well, yeah, free safety.
Oh, free safety.
Right next to him. And you got Jared Wilson, of course, who's essentially the incumbent. You got a guy like Andrew Wingard, who's a special teams guy, shouldn't even be in this conversation in terms of playing valuable time. We've seen, I think, enough of that, with all due respect to Wingard. Here's a guy that I like, man. And I liked a lot of things about, and this is probably more from the strong safety spot, I would think, but Daniel Thomas, I thought he was starting to show some things. Then he got hurt, but I liked a few of the things that I saw. I don't want to overvalue that or dramatize that, but I like him, and he's going to be in the depth play at safety. I don't think he's going to be in the starting realm, but that's one of the guys that they have. The big play here is Cisco, and when can he be ready, right? Because there are high expectations on the draft pick out of Syracuse, but he also is coming off injury, and a pretty significant injury. So I look at him as more of a second half of the year guy, where I don't really look at him so much in the early going.
Sure.
And so that's why I don't include him as much in this conversation right now. Is Wilson the clear-cut guy, and he's going to be that steady Eddie guy, even though he's not the flashy player back there?
I think Daniel Thomas showed you a lot last year. He got his reps. I think he's a good communicator, was usually in the right spot. We weren't saying, Daniel Thomas out of position a lot last year. With that being said, though, let me ask you this question. I think if Cisco's healthy 100%, he's the clear-cut favorite, obviously.
I think he will assume the role at some point
eventually
of the season, as long as he's good to go health-wise.
But with where we sit right now, and once again, we just talked about Jenkins a little bit, where he's kind of the high-priced safety. What do you want back there more? Do you want the boomer bust maybe guy with a guy like Thomas, or do you want kind of the sure thing and pay a little more with Jared Wilson? And to me, at free safety, I'm taking Jared Wilson. Because to me, he's dependable. He offers you that communication. He's playing the center field. And versatility can be a big thing. But what you need from him is make sure everyone's on the same page. And I feel like Jared Wilson can communicate well, and he can make sure everybody's lined up. There wasn't a lot of times last year where Jared Wilson's in the wrong spot or like the secondary. I like what we saw from Jared Wilson. I would probably go with him until Cisco's ready.
Here's the thing I like about Wilson. I think he's dependable. I think he's, it was 2 years ago, I believe it was, he played every single snap for the defense. I think he's a bit underrated because he's not flashy. He obviously isn't the long-term, hey, we can be dynamic, we can't get any better player, because they wouldn't have made free agent acquisitions and drafted the way they did if they thought he was that guy. But I do think he is a nice stopgap guy to get to Cisco and get him healthy. And I think he's better than that. Stopgap guy kind of insinuates that, he's just okay, but he can play it for a little bit. No, I think he is better than that. I think he's not a superstar player. I think that's clear as day. But I think he's a very solid player. And what I'd like to see a little bit with Wilson back there is how much do them beefing up the secondary, how much does that help him, right? Where he's not trying to account for all these other guys maybe making mistakes because they weren't that good or young or whatever it might be. So I think that's the plus side of a guy like Wilson being back there. Reliability, dependability, experience, but also a guy like him could really elevate his game based on the fact that now they have Tyson Campbell, C.J. Henderson in year 2, Shaquille Griffin at the corner spot, now Rayshawn Jenkins. So they've got some players back there that will make his job a little bit easier, his life a little bit easier. Doesn't have to be a playmaker. Not the Earl Thomas, not even what we saw at times from a Tayshaun Gibson. But just steady Eddie. Don't make mistakes, man. Just don't make mistakes. You're the last line of defense. Now, he did make some mistakes last year. That was a problem. It's not like he played great.
He didn't play perfect.
I mean, nobody played great on that defense.
Yeah.
But I think he might have a chance with the guys that they brought in to play better.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I don't know. And I'll have to go back and watch film, check the tape if they will. But I remember a lot of times last year where I was saying, or I was like literally pulling my hair out because Jared Wilson wasn't on the right plane, or he wasn't, what I mean?
I think it was more whiff tackles, missed tackles
sure.
on some of those break-free runs, know?
You're a free safety. You're supposed to make those plays. I get that. But at the end of the day, I mean, what I want from you is to make sure that nothing's getting over the top and no one's burning you deep. And I agree with you. I think that if you surround him with improved players, with higher caliber players, then what does that do to him? Because we talk about how dependable he is, but if you add greatness around him, well, then maybe that dependability can be boosted a little bit. And now maybe you're playing outside yourself a little more in the best way possible. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that, depending on what this defense is going to look like once again, but the great guys around him, I think Jared Wilson would be the safer pick. Nothing against Thomas. I think Thomas could be a good player as well. But like, if I'm Joe Cullen and I'm analyzing this defense, I don't need to make the biggest splashes at every single position. What I need in a first-year defense is dependability. I think Jared Wilson can give you that.
By the way, you got Rudy Ford here too, but he's really he was signed as, I think, core special teams guy, or more of a special teams guy than you'll see as a contributor, in that back end. Let me ask you this: you got, let's just say it's Jenkins and Jared Wilson to start. And maybe sometimes Cisco gets healthy enough and comes in and plays. And I think there's a lot of expectation on Cisco. I think he's an excitable guy that they drafted because of the production that he had in college. And I'm in on that, by the way. I like that. I really like the pick. The more you look at him, now you just hope he gets healthy. And how quick can he contribute, I think, is a sincere question. What are you more concerned about for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Their corner position or their secondary position?
Oh, to me, it's the corner position all day, and we can maybe break that down sometime later this week. But to me, it's C.J. Henderson, obviously. What do you have with him? Because in terms of dependability, he showed glimpses last year. He might have had his best game the first game of the season, and then it went down from there, and that always makes you nervous. And now, once again, injuries could be a thing. Whether mentally he was there, whatever the case may be, but it's never a good sign when you play some of your best ball early on in your career, and as the season progresses, as a rookie, you play worse and worse ball. It's supposed to go the other way around. So obviously, there's a big question there. There's a big question with Tyson Campbell. Do you put him in the slot? Is he the 2 corner? There's a question there. So once again, it's hard to talk about dependability because we don't know where Tyson Campbell's playing yet. Only the coaches know right now. And then we talk about a guy like Shaq Griffin, who, you spent all this money on. Well, he's got to be the guy, right? Like, I mean, you can't justify not spending that much money and saying, hey, go play the 2. No, you're going to shadow the 1 more than likely because that's just the way it's going to be. That's what you're getting paid to do. So to me, there's some more question marks at the secondary position in terms of cornerback than there is at safety.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of pressure on what the Jaguars did on the defensive side. It looks better on paper. They spent money on paper. They spent money. They did. That's reality on their defense to beef it up. They bring in Joe Cullen as a defensive coordinator. There's expectation that their defense will be so much better, in part because it can't be worse, but because they put a lot of emphasis there, too, from a veteran standpoint. They don't have to rely on just like these young guys to play back there, which is what they were doing a little bit last year at times. So, Roy Robertson Harris, that signing. Rayshon Jenkins, that signing. Shaquille Griffin, that signing. Those are 3 important things to watch at how the Jags did in spending their free agent money.
Yeah.
You can't come up empty on 2 of those 3 guys. The nature of free agency is that it's going to be hit or miss. But it's really important that they hit on those guys. And I really think especially the back end guys, because they tried to reshape the back end with Jenkins, with Griffin as being the staple players, and then surround them with some young guys in Henderson, Campbell, obviously bringing in Cisco eventually. So I think it will be it's fascinating to watch. I feel like, man, that I believe they have bodies there. Like, I believe I know Shaquille Griffin a little bit more than I know Rayshon Jenkins, and so I almost trust him more. And it might be just because he's a bigger name guy.
Yeah.
But I think I think I have more concern at safety to answer my own question, because if C.J. Henderson doesn't work out or isn't playing well, you can move Tyson Campbell there, and I think you got a good athlete, a good player, a high investment that could go over there and play there. You don't have that kind of depth, it doesn't feel like, at the safety position. So, answer, I know there are question marks. There are question marks on both of them, both positions. But I actually think I feel better about the corners than they do the safety.
But let's be honest, though, Brent. If Henderson doesn't work out, then what are we going to be talking about? Well, you blew a first-round pick on C.J. Henderson. If you
that is true.
And like that'll be a big narrative.
But it's not Urban did.
As I say, it's not an Urban, but still, just I know.
Well, Bulky kind of in part did.
Yeah, but I mean, and it's not fair to him. But we talk about this is the guy that replaced Jalen Ramsey, and then that's what he's known for. So
yeah, I'll give you one other thing. I feel like the depth at corner is, I might even have more confidence in.
That I agree with.
Than the safety position too.
I think you've
got guys
more.
like Sidney Jones. You got Chris Claybrooks, who played a bit last year, right?
Yeah, Trey Herndon.
Trey Herndon. Luka Barku was kind of that fun guy in camp. Didn't really do much, if he got in the game at all. So I feel like I'm okay with those guys more than I'm okay with, what if Rayshon Jenkins gets hurt, or what if Jared Wilson doesn't work out? What if Cisco doesn't come back? So I guess that's why I'm still a little questionable on the safety position. It'll be a camp battle to watch, though. Can anybody? The incumbent in that spot's going to be Jared Wilson. Can anybody wrestle that job away from him?
I mean, I think
interesting to watch.
For sure. I think it comes down to Daniel Thomas. I think Thomas theoretically could, depending what he brings to the table. So I think if there's going to be for instance, a training camp battle, assuming Cisco's not going to be good to go right off the get-go, then I think that the biggest battle at the safety spot is going to be between Wilson and Thomas.
I don't know if I'll say this about this defense. And you know me, I don't pretend to be like this X's and O's guy, the schematic guy on offense and defense, and they're going to run this and do this. But I think this is the most confused I've ever been about a Jaguars defense and its personnel. And some of that's just the nature of the way the game has gone. So many of the safeties can play both spots now, right? You can move them around. They kind of want to be moved around. You want to have that versatility to move around. They're so athletic. The game is dictated. I don't need that big Donovan Darius bopper guy, right, at the strong safety spot.
Yes.
So therefore, you can have the athletic guy who can also play center field.
Yep.
And so with that comes question marks like, okay, I think I saw Daniel Thomas more in that strong safety mold. I think that's where he kind of fits, but can he kind of move over and play that free safety spot and make a run at Jared Wilson in some playing time? I view him more as a strong safety type. But even to further that point about my confusion on their defense is we spent much of this offseason talking about the 4-3 and the 3-4, and we know it's going to look a little bit more 3-4-ish, but Joe Cullen will not go all there and say it is definitely all 3-4. We're going to do some hybrid stuff, which means it's very hard to even name their front.
This is true.
It's hard to name like who is going to run out there on the first snap on defense.
Yeah,
that's unusual, man. I mean, that's weird. Like we've been able to do that. You might not like what's running out there, but you've been able to do that. We cannot say with certainty like what defense is going to run out week 1 in Houston on the first play of the game. It's really hard to do.
No, when we're talking about their front, you're absolutely right, because we don't know exactly is it going to be over, is it going to be under. Sometimes, in these 3-4 defenses, sometimes the best players don't necessarily play. I'm talking about like the best capable players because, well, who's bigger? Who's better in the run game? Like you take all those things into account. We're talking about a 3-4 defense, but you mentioned it and you hit it right on the head. From the safety position, it's a little different, because usually the best guys do play assuming that they can handle both duties. And you said it. You have to be able to stop the run. You got to be able to fall back into coverage. You have to blitz sometimes. Like that's what makes a 3-4 safety a 3-4 safety. So I get what you're saying. Maybe you see Daniel Thomas a little more as a strong safety than you do a free safety. In this defense, though, it doesn't really matter. Like, 9 times out of 10, Jared Wilson will be in the center field and Jenkins will be blitzing. Like that's just expect to see that for the most part. But every once in a while, there's going to be another wrinkle in there. And I think if we're talking about depth purposes, you need guys that can do both. So Daniel Thomas, is he more of a strong safety or more than free safety? Doesn't really matter, because you got to be able to do both these things, because I think this defense will be that dynamic.
Real quick follow-up to that. Is that the nature of the 3-4 that brings all those questions into play, or is it the nature of the modern-day defense and scheme and player?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little combination of, well, this is obviously a very pass-heavy NFL now, right? So you have to match speed for speed. Yeah, it's great to have that strong safety that can just come downhill and thump somebody. But now if you see a strong safety, it's like a Jamal Adams who can do everything, who can go back into coverage if he has to. He's not just a thumper. He's a jack of all trades, if you will. But it's also a combination of the scheme where it's, all right, 3-4, all about confusion, all about where's the blitz coming from. Well, if you got the strong safety on the line, it's probably he's probably going to blitz. Well, here comes the free safety. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always talk about Eric Berry, and I hold Eric Berry in very high regard because he was one heck of a football player and a great leader when I was there in Kansas City. That guy could do everything. That guy could bring the lumber when you had to bring the lumber. That guy could drop back into coverage. He could blitz, was not afraid to tackle somebody. He was literally all around the field, and you couldn't put him in a box and say, well, he's a strong safety, he's a free safety, because he was that talented. That's what makes a good 3-4 defense, is having those versatile safeties.
Yeah, I think the Jags have a bunch of that versatility up front and even in the back end. We'll see what it looks like in just about a week when camp opens.